Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. The guts of my submission is basically that I believe the City Council is misleading the public in their promotion of asset sales. Court of Memphis said $100 million is what our shortfall would be. Cameron Partners said 400 and 900 million. Obviously, either very poor analysis leading to such widely disparate figures. And City Council is still paying Camerons, who are now quoting 1.2 billion. Now, Cameron Partners are known for promoting asset sales and for making big money out of managing asset sales. No one would contract Camerons for advice unless they had already decided to sell assets and needed a hugely biased firm like Camerons to support their decision. We know there's something very fishy, if not collusion, in the engagement of Camerons, as the City Council refuses to let the public...
Excuse me, I'm just going to have to stop you here. I mean, this is not relevant to the long-term plan, and I mean, we don't have the system that they have in Parliament where somebody where statements are made about some, an individual or a firm, that they get a right of reply so it can be written into the record. They don't have a right of reply in this environment. So I'd rather that you focused on the issues rather than, advisors or, naming individuals. If you could please just stick to the issues.
Okay. A number of red herrings, I believe, have been floated in the argument. One I heard the other night was that without asset sales, we wouldn't be able to repair the East. I think it's a red herring in that the East has never been a priority for the council, and asset sales are probably not going to make any difference to that. Another red herring, the convention center is not a cost to Christchurch. It is a cost to Christchurch, given that Christchurch could have made a much stronger demand of the government to not waste the money on the city, on the convention center, and instead to put it into the repairs of Christchurch. Now, the previous convention center lost money almost every year, and now one to double the size is probably going to lose twice as much. And the council needs these hundreds of millions of dollars, not the overseas contractors. The red herring that there's no other options, obviously the alternative plan put forward by some of the more far-sighted councillors is one example of other options. Cutting expenditures, in particular capital expenditures, is a vital option. Why has the council spent money on upgrading curbings and footpaths and reserves in affluent areas, rebuilding roundabouts or replacing them with lights when they were working acceptably well before? And I noticed on the way down here, there was a sign on Durham Street saying, we want to hear what your feelings about us totally changing the, obviously Durham Street. It doesn't need to be changed. It may be better if it's changed, but it doesn't need to be changed now. Spending hundreds of thousands on unneeded park and reserve amenities like the useless lookout at the Sticks Mill Reserve, or new footpaths in Regent's Park when the previous footpaths were not even damaged. I happen to live in Regent's Park. Every house on the street that I live in is worth over $1 million except my own. And the attention the council has given to the waterways, the footpaths and everything there is being extreme. And you see the obvious difference between that and the East, where very little attention has been paid. I believe that if councillors could see with their own eyes the unnecessary capital expenditures that continue to be made in areas where there's no necessity and no hurry, they would find they could pinpoint savings of millions of dollars and perhaps even hundreds of millions. The claim that selling only part of the enterprises would leave the council with control and they'd be able to protect the public interest is another red herring. Under corporate law in New Zealand, the majority shareholder cannot take any action that would disadvantage the minority shareholder as long as that minority shareholder had 25%, which is what will happen either because a large corporation buys more than 25% or one buyer accumulates more than 25% through the market, which is common practice after asset sales. The minority shareholder can demand higher charges for electricity, port or airport services, bus fares, etc., to maximize their profits. Higher charges mean the company's value increases so they can sell their share for a capital gain. The new buyer will then argue that because they paid so much more for their share, then charges for services must go up so they can get adequate compensation. This is exactly what has happened in public-private partnerships around the world over the last 30 years. Wellington's sale of their electricity network is enlightening. The privatized company was sold 4 times, the last sale being 3 times the value of the first sale. Wellington City saved $11 million in interest cost every year, yet their consumers are paying $80 million more in the cost of their electricity, a 295% increase. Whereas the Wellington Council still owns the water network, and the cost of running that has only risen by 17%. So to say that selling assets will keep rates down when the actual expenditure for electricity of ratepayers or the cost of getting goods through the port or the airport will reduce rates is a red herring. In fact, it may reduce rates or may keep them from going up as high, but the cost will be borne in a greater degree by the ratepayer. Interesting now, $100 million is exported out of Wellington to the Shanghai City Council because of their privatization. The $160 million or so that is to be spent.
We're well over time, so can you just come to a rapid conclusion?
Okay, well, very, very quickly, I don't think you should spend money in the on the city center because it's there's so many vacancies now, and there's so few businesses wanting to move back into the city center. And I think you should spend a lot of time looking at international situations where they've sold assets, which has been disastrous in many cases. And the last very quick point is the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement that the government is going to sign basically says that if you sell, if an overseas company owns, or even a New Zealand company owns some of our assets here, then if you make any move like lowering electricity prices to attract businesses or something like that, they can sue the government. And if you hold 100% ownership, that cannot happen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's actually not true, but you can be just as liable under the investor state provisions, but that's part of it.
I just had a wee point, if I may raise a little point of order there. I felt your comparison with Parliament isn't right, because this is a private citizen who I think is entitled to...
No, anyone who comes before a select committee in Parliament,
yep,
or who makes a statement in Parliament, right, who is actually commenting on someone else, yep, then that someone else gets a right of reply that gets written into the record. And we don't have that in local government. I think it is an omission. People can come here and say what they like about someone. I'm actually protecting the interests that cannot be protected in any other way, which is to say, come to the point. We've had that point made before, and let's just leave it at that. But, you know, the submission time is well and truly over on this submission.
It didn't strike me as being too out of bounds at all. But...
Well, I'm sorry, you have a particular view, and you are supporting that, and I just want to cut this out right now. So just thank you, Charles. That's very good to see you.
Thank you.
And could I invite Howard Livingston to come forward?